Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about 1917, and this movie is directed by Sam Mendes, and it came out in 2019. I have actually seen this movie before. I first watched this movie when it came out in theaters, and I can't remember why I didn't make a review back then, but this is a film that I know a lot of people loved, and when I first watched it, I kind of liked it. I wasn't like overly impressed, and it didn't blow me away like it did a lot of people felt. And basically, from what I've heard, for those people who did not like Dunkirk, those are the people who like 1917. And that's pretty much the impression that I was getting. And that's kind of how I feel about this movie. I personally am a big fan of Dunkirk. I think that's a really great movie. And I rewatched it not too long ago. And I still feel as though that movie holds up. And this movie, I thought was decent the first time I watched it. This time rewatching it, I got some problems with it. But we'll go through the positives really quickly because there are things that I do like about this movie. There's good things in it. And the most obvious one is I think the whole single take element of this movie is really cool, and there's some really cool scenes in this movie in terms of how things are presented visually, and there are moments where we get close shots, and I feel as though they were used appropriately. I feel as though the one take element did help the movie in ways, but in some ways I feel as though it kind of held it back because when we were in scenes where it was just people talking or just the main character talking to other people, that's where the movie doesn't really work for me. And I really enjoyed the first act of the movie. I think that's the strongest part about this movie is the first act is strong, and we get to the setup and we get the plot of the movie. I really enjoyed all that when our main characters get their orders to deliver a message, and it's very simple, very to the point. I guess to some extent doesn't really waste a whole lot of time because it's just a movie where you're going from point A to point B, and you have I don't know, 12 or so hours to achieve this goal, and they're just trying to do it as quick as they can. And the last positive that I have for this movie is when the music is subtle, that's where I like it. When it's not, when it's very in your face, that's where it doesn't work for me. And the music, I feel, is really overused in this movie. And it does drag a lot of scenes down for me. It just makes certain scenes feel cheesy and doesn't really complement any scene that it's in. And I would have just preferred no music in a lot of scenes. There were also plenty of cheesy moments that also dragged the movie down. And I was just not having it because it wasn't cheesy in a way that I liked or in a way that complemented the tone or anything like that. It was just distracting and took away from my experience. Like I said earlier, the first act I think is the strongest point in the film. Everything after that I can do without. Mostly because what's going on in terms of the story or what our main character is experiencing is just not all that interesting for me. And I did get kind of bored after a certain point. Like the third act, right before we get there, I was quite checked out. I was just waiting for the movie to end. I was like, let's just wrap this up. And I do feel as though the movie is too long for what it is. It's 2 hours long, and normally that's fine, but in a movie that's quite simple, I guess, maybe it could have been like 15 minutes shorter, possibly 20, because I just didn't feel as though the runtime was justified. The action scenes in this movie, they were nothing memorable after the first act. Like, in terms of action, the best scene in the movie was the underground scene or whatever. I thought that was the best action scene in the movie, whereas the rest of the movie was just, yeah, this is happening and you're narrowly avoiding getting shot. But it just didn't have any impact on me. I just didn't really care. And that's a big problem in a movie like this, because if you don't care about what's going on, then the movie's not going to work. And also, while watching this movie, I kept thinking of Jarhead, and I believe the director Sam Mendes also directed that movie. And I was just thinking to myself, I wish I was watching that movie. That movie is a film where I had more attachment to the characters and I was more with it. It had more to offer. Like, I would happily rewatch Jarhead over this. Whereas this is just a war movie that has a really great idea, and after a certain point, it just loses me because what they're doing with it is just not all that interesting. And that's about all I have to say about 1917. It was fine. It was a bit worse than I remembered it. There are movies that this director, Sam Mendes, has made that I prefer. Like, I love American Beauty. Jarhead, I think, is pretty good. Skyfall, I think, is great. And there are good movies that he's made. Although I don't necessarily connect with every single movie that he's made. Like, Spectre, not the best movie ever made. Road to Perdition, that movie is fine. Like, I barely remember anything about that movie. And then you have this, and this is disappointing, but not in the sense that I had high expectations for it. It's just that I was just kind of bored. Like, it didn't connect with me. It was a film that existed, and I loved the setup, and there were moments in this movie that reminded me of Paths of Glory. And once that stuff stops, then it just becomes forgettable for me. So with all that being said, I'm going to give 1917 a 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos as always. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you thought of 1917, and my social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Godzilla -1. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.